Um, he's also a published book contribute author for a publication in the Journal of Chemistry A. And besides being a genius, of course, he's also a philanthropist. He's an advocate for the Coalition of the Homeless in Chicago. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, who, like his company, is out of this world. Isaac Strain.
Oh, it's okay, yeah. Do you know where it might be? I can talk.
Yeah,
okay.
we have a little issue with the PowerPoint. We couldn't get it connected.
Ooh,
yes.
Okay. All right. I might go off my phone a little bit just to make sure I stay on topic. But actually, I go by Nathan. Isaac is my professional name, so if you look me up on LinkedIn, or if you're looking for me professionally, Isaac is my name. If you're talking to me casually, just call me Nathan. I just go by Isaac at work. So I'm going to start by kind of getting an idea. How do you all feel right now? Can we all stand up for a second? I know everyone hates Feel a little better? All right, you all sit down.
Stand up, sit down.
Siblings. I'm the middle child, so any of you, raise your hand if you're a middle child. Yeah, you guys are going to be hella successful. Because you're totally forgotten. The older one's the responsible one, the younger one's the baby, and you're just kind of left there, so you have to make a name for yourself.
Exactly.
My older sister actually is in the audience. She works at Europe in San Francisco. My little sister, she's in Indiana doing her own little sister thing. Yeah, so we grew up in a small town west of Chicago. Population, I think, started at 2,000 people in this town, grew to like 10,000 by the time I left. We got our first stoplight when I was 18, so this is the kind of real small community that you guys probably aren't used to here. This is in Illinois, farm country. My parents were married, but got divorced when I was about 5 years old, and we lost our first house then. My dad moved to Indiana, and I continued to see him, but he didn't work regularly for about 10 years, so financially we weren't really that stable. My mom took care of us. She really struggled raising 3 kids, working. She eventually got remarried again, divorced again. We lost our house again, and the second time we lost our house, my sister had already moved on and she was an adult doing her own thing, but when we lost our house the second time, I ended up homeless for my last year of high school. Up until that point, some of the things I enjoyed doing, hanging out with animals. I love animals, wild animals, domesticated animals. I actually train dogs in my spare time. And I was going to show you a picture of them. That's why the presentation, that was the most important part of the presentation. I enjoy martial arts, physical activity, reading, learning, music. I enjoyed absolutely everything. It was super involved. But once I became homeless, that all kind of changed. I didn't lose my interest, I just had to make a sacrifice at that point. When you have, when you're put in a totally new situation that challenges you in ways you haven't been challenged, you have to sometimes set the things you love aside. So the new things that I spent my time doing my senior year was getting on food stamps. That was really difficult, believe it or not. Getting a library card. Without a permanent address, I couldn't get a library card, so I couldn't use the internet. We only had one library within like 20 miles of us. I didn't have a working car. I was looking for jobs, but I could only go to jobs that I could walk to. If there were no job openings, then I just don't have an opportunity to work. Spent a lot of time showing up at food pantries early, so I'd skip school to get to the food pantry as early as I could to get food. So being homeless was a totally new experience for me that just threw me into a 180. I eventually wasn't living in my car or the foreclosed house, and I started living on a neighbor's couch. So like for the last 6 months of my senior year, I had a little more stability, but it wasn't easy, particularly the not having money for food. I got to a point actually where I did find a job, but it was at the only factory in town and it would have required me to drop out of high school. And I was getting so frustrated with trying to, eat regularly and to sleep somewhere comfortable that I decided I was going to drop out of school and work in this factory. I'd get a GED later and I'd figure it out, right? I didn't show up to school for a few days, and luckily someone at my school contacted what's known as a McKinney-Vento district liaison. So there's a law, a federal law, that requires schools to identify homeless youth if they're under 18 and to report it to the state. So I was lucky someone had done that at my school, and this district liaison basically took me aside and said, hey, we need to keep you in school. I'm going to help you get your life on track and get you to college, because college is going to be what saves you. So at her advice, I started, she helped me navigate public assistance, food stamps, getting a library card. Applying to college was a big thing. I had no plans of going to college at this point because I was just focused on surviving right now. And she showed me how important it was to plan for the future despite the really difficult current circumstances, because it's more important to think about the long road than the short road. So after that, I can always talk more about that specific experience, but I eventually did get a scholarship to go to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I was really lucky because it was a full ride for the first 3 years. So once I got into school, I finally had a stable source of food, a place to sleep regularly, and now I had an opportunity. I'd just been given this opportunity to make something of myself. I knew that I had this time in college, and right when I left college, I better have it figured out because I had nowhere to go back to. So this is kind of, I'm not sure about all of your stories. I'm sure you all come from very different backgrounds, but this is somewhat similar to where you are all right now, where you are at the beginning of an opportunity to make something amazing of yourself. And I'm going to try to tailor my advice to what I would have liked to have known at that point. But to do that, I want to walk you through my work experience. Oh! Nice, nice. Is there a clip?
Yeah, are you
Perfect, yeah, this is great, guys. Let's go back and highlight these beautiful dogs here. My sister, I play guitar.
Great job, ID.
Oh, it's hard to see, but the beginning of a hero's journey. A struggle is great because no hero's journey exists without a huge struggle or something to overcome. And when you meet someone, there's two ways you can introduce yourself. You can introduce yourself with accomplishments, which is kind of like a laundry list, and people don't really like that. Or you can introduce yourself as a story, as like, this is where I'm from, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. And that's how that's how really successful people introduce themselves. So this is great. Anytime you have struggle, it's the beginning of a hero's journey. So we'll start looking at challenges that way. So here's my work experience. 2013, freshman at University of Illinois. 2014, I was lucky enough to have a first author publication in Stockholm, Sweden, in the Royal Society of Chemistry's journal Material Science. Then, in 2015, I got 2 internships, one with Shell, Projects and Technology in Houston, and one with ExxonMobil. 2016, 2 other internships, one with Shell. This was with exploration and production in New Orleans, and then a job with BP in Whiting, Indiana. 2017, I got a mentor and had another internship, and now I have a full-time position at SpaceX. So this is a pretty easy to read timeline. Looks like I have a lot of work experience. This is great. But what is more important is the key decision that got me to each one of these places. It was really one key moment I can think of that allowed me to attain this wonderful experience. So the first one was getting into U of I took advice from a professional despite my circumstances. Now, a lot of us, what happens is when we get into a place of struggle or instability, we kind of we bottle things up. We don't trust what's around us. Chances are, if you're in a bad circumstance, you have a good reason to distrust those around you or the circumstances around you. The hardest thing to do is to accept your situation and to still listen to someone and take yet another risk. When I was taking the advice from this professional, she seemed qualified. It seemed like she knew what she was talking about, but I was taking another risk. I was applying to colleges, hoping to get in, and if I didn't, then I was going to be done with high school. That job opportunity in the factory was going to pass me up. This was a risk I was taking, but I took advice from a professional despite my circumstances, and that's what got me into college. Now, the next one is awesome. I sat in the front of one class in college every single day. Well, all my classes I sat in the front. But this one in particular, I asked good questions, and halfway through the semester, the professor got so tired of not enough students asking good questions, he called me and 2 other students up and said, "You 3, you ask great questions. You have an opportunity to go research in Sweden now. Come up and talk to me about it after class." And he used it as a motivational tool to get the other students participating. But because I was active, I sat in the front, I participated, I got noticed, and I got given an opportunity to go overseas and to prove myself scientifically. The next one is getting my internships. Prepared, persisted, and networked. So it shows me getting those internships in 2015, but I started preparing and talking to people at those companies in 2013. I showed up at Career Fair in 2014 with t-shirt and ripped jeans because I didn't have anything else, a really poorly put together resume, and they noticed me. They weren't interested in hiring me at the time, but when I came back in 2015, dressed appropriately, a tailored resume for the jobs that I wanted, they remembered me. They remembered me as a guy who came unprepared the previous years and was now showing up prepared and with something tangible on his resume. That's how I got those jobs. And I can talk to anybody separately about the networking aspect later. The next thing was how to get the return internships, follow through. Once you get the opportunity, it is not over. Once you get the job, the interview has not stopped. The entire job, especially for internships, is your interview. It feels a little overwhelming because everything that you do, every interaction you have, is part of the interview process still. You have not won. Okay? Even me, finishing the internships and getting this first return offer, that wasn't it for me. This is just round 2 of interviews. All right, so 2017, this was another huge turning point for me. I sought a mentor. Okay, this is the most important thing you can do. If anyone knows what Jedi Masters are, right? Okay, the idea is Master Apprentice, and the goal is for the Master to teach the apprentice so well that eventually he becomes Darth Vader and kills the Darth. The Master Apprentice relationship is really, really powerful. You have to seek a mentor, though. A mentor's not going to come and find you. If they do, they're probably not a good mentor. You need to go seek a mentor, and you want to find somebody who doesn't necessarily have everything that you want, but has achieved things that are at least similar enough to what you're trying to achieve. I was on a bus in Germany, going from Germany to Italy with a backpack, taking a spontaneous trip with my friend, and just started a conversation with a guy with like alligator shoes on a bus. And it turned out after 6 hours of talking, he was a fund manager, one of the first investors in Amazon, huge net worth, but had some incredible advice. He was retired at 35, so he had a lot of time. He had a lot of experience running chemical companies, petroleum companies, a lot of private equity experience. And when I heard his experience, I just straight up asked him, I said, look, I want you to be my mentor. Would you do that? And he thought about it, and I said, let me send you an email. I sent him a follow-up email, essentially making my case as to why I wanted him as a mentor and what I was hoping to get out of it. And now he's my mentor. And what was great about that is he's the reason, partially, that I'm at SpaceX now. Coming to SpaceX was a combination of advice from my mentor, following through, persistence. All the things that I did previously are what led me to this role. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I want to give you the most important advice. There's lots of advice I could give you. Book recommendation. You all need to write down Your Brain at Work. Okay? If you read it, you have to read it like a textbook. That means you need to take notes in the margins. If you just read through it and enjoy it, you're not going to get the same benefit. It's taken me 2 years. It's very small, but 2 years to go through it because I read a chapter and I sit on it for weeks. When you start reading it, you'll see how it ties into all this. That's all. Your Brain at Work by David Rock. So the book will touch on some of this, but this is the advice, the most important advice that I think I would have enjoyed if in your position or back in 2013 for myself. So the first thing is it's all about setting goals and following through. So the first part of doing that is devoting more time to planning. The greater the importance, the more planning required, okay? I remember growing up, this is just an example of lack of planning. My stepdad, he wanted to get a car. We weren't in a very good financial situation. And the car broke down, and that very day, he went to the car dealer with no research, no thinking about it, bought a brand new economy car. Probably the worst investment you can make. And for a $20,000 decision, for something that big, you better spend weeks, if not months, planning it, okay? So I try to think about that with absolutely every decision I make. In the morning, if I'm planning for the day, it should take about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. If I'm planning a long-term, year-long goal, this should be something that I plan over a series of hours, maybe a couple days. If I'm trying to plan something like purchasing a car, a house, or even setting some long-term goals that are like 3 to 5 years long, I want to not only plan it for weeks at a time, I want to create the plan, run it by my mentor, invest in the planning aspect because that's the part that requires the most energy from your mind. If you set the plan, all you have to do is run on autopilot from that point on. Next part of planning is write down. See how that's in bold? You're all doing a great job of that. The reason you want to write things down is because you're activating your motor cortex. When you activate your motor cortex while you're thinking, you're activating different neural pathways, and your brain is going to be writing to different parts of your mind. So when you go to find that information later, whether it takes this neural pathway or that one, it's more likely to run into the information quicker, okay? So doing things that involve multiple parts of your brain when you're trying to commit things to memory will really help you recall faster and more effectively. Writing down uses your motor cortex, so that's why it's very important to do that. For some of you who are kinesthetic, it might also help to even speak it out loud, to write it down, and then to speak it out loud and hear yourself and feel what it feels like to come out of your mouth. Write down the problem, the solution, the cost, and the benefit to any goal that you set. So we'll go through an example after this, but very clearly state the problem, one sentence. State the solution as concise as you can. These things, the writing, the problem, the solution, though they're short, there should be a lot of thought put into this one sentence, because this is going to be what you follow throughout your goal. The cost, this is what you're willing to give up. When I set a goal, I write down right then and there the things that I'm willing to give up for this. This is important, because if something comes up that you're trying to achieve your goal and you're forced to give up something beyond what you're willing to give up, then you have to reevaluate. Or if something comes up and you have to give something up and it's on your list, you've already decided, hey, I'm willing to give this up. I've written this down as the cost, and I've already acknowledged that this is okay. I've thought about it. Okay? And then the benefit. This is what is going to be your driver. You don't want to use punishments to drive a goal. You don't want to punish yourself for not meeting things. Instead, you want to set up a reward system. Something small, like if I follow the steps to my plan, at the end of the week, you like coffee? Get a fancy crap whatever at Starfruit, okay? For me, I use video games. I love video games. I'm addicted. I don't let myself play unless I do the things I'm supposed to for my goals. So whatever it is, set up a benefit, a reward mechanism. Next thing is to run your plan by a second set of eyes. How many of you have had great ideas that turned out horribly? Everybody should raise their hands. You all have had great ideas. Okay? How many of those great ideas did you run by someone else? Okay, just think about it. You don't have to answer. But think about how many of those ideas that in your mind seemed really awesome and concrete and foolproof, and then it came to doing it and it didn't quite work out. Well, when you have to present a plan to someone else, you're going to start thinking about what they're going to ask you about. And that forces you to prepare in a way, thank you so much, that you wouldn't if you just were relying on your own set of eyes. This is usually great for your mentor, but if you don't have a mentor, run your plan by someone else, anyone else. Just, it forces you to think and to be accountable. That leads into following through. Build accountability into your plan. We talked about setting up a benefit. Part of what informs that benefit is if you've been accountable. So for me, I have a morning and night routine, And if I successfully complete those routines, then I put a tally down. If I get 10 tallies, so 10 days of following that routine, I'm allowed to do my video games, okay? It sounds stupid, but it works for me. It's made a huge difference for me. Okay, do we have a volunteer? Because what I would like is for someone to think of a problem, a small, I guess, a problem that we can try to create a plan for right now, and we're gonna walk through it as a group, and you're gonna either try yourself to tell me how you would do this, or we can kind of help it out together, but I wanna see who is the volunteer that wants to pitch a problem that they would like to set a plan for. Great. So yeah, introduce yourself, and then think or say what the problem is, and we're gonna talk, you and I, about how we can put a plan together for it. And if we get lost along the way, we can get some help from all these wonderful people here.
Okay, well, hello. My name is Henry. I'm from the business track. And one problem I'd say I have is managing my time. I'm not very good at that.
All right, so are we talking like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
So what?
From like the beginning of the day to the end, I kind of scatter around the place.
Okay, so the problem statement is you have difficulty managing your time on a daily basis. Okay, so that's the problem statement. It's short, it encompasses the problem, it doesn't go too far outside of it. So next would be the solution. What would be the ultimate place you'd want to be at once we accomplish this goal?
Not rushing, I'd say. Right?
Not rushing, okay, so not feeling rush?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Is there anything else that we can put in there maybe that is a more data-driven metric? So feeling rushed is hard to gauge. Maybe we could have something like, have a list written that like follows a plan throughout the day, either a schedule or just a list of things to get done, a to-do list. So the solution would be create a list or schedule to follow on a daily basis.
And
okay?
reminded, right?
That works too, yeah. So let's look into what you're willing to give up to do this. How much time are you willing to give up to get yourself on track? On a daily basis, how much time would you be okay with setting aside to plan out your day?
10 to 20 minutes.
Okay, so 20 minutes would be the cost, okay? And then how about consistently doing this? Are you going to do this on the weekdays, the weekends, or all the time?
I'd say I'd probably want to do it for Sunday and have my whole week planned
Okay,
out.
all right, so you want to have a week planned out. So you're going to, the cost is going to be 20 minutes on a Sunday. Every Sunday, any Sunday, 20 minutes on Sunday. Now the benefit to this, can you list some of the benefits you think you'll get from this?
I won't be rushed,
Mhm.
less stress, more time to finish things. For now, that's what I have.
Okay, so once you write all that down, you're going to take a plan, try to make it numerically step-by-step based. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, on Sunday, at the beginning of my 20 minutes, the first thing I'm going to do is write down all the things I have to do in the week by the day, right? Then the second thing you're going to write down, and maybe that'll take 5 minutes. Second thing is organizing. And you're going to want to try to think of some ways that can help inform that organization. And you're going to write those down, maybe allot 10 minutes to that. And then step 3 would be review, where you spend 5 minutes having someone review it, whether it be a friend, someone close by. If you're doing this every week, you want to be someone who you regularly interact with. So I guess step 4 would be finding someone to run it by. There's 4 steps. The first is to write down all the things you have to do throughout the week. Second is to create criteria for informing when you do those things. The third would be finding someone to run your plan by, and the fourth would be running your plan by that person. Okay, so that's your plan. Once it's written down, now you have to build a way of having accountability. So what can you do? What's something that you would have as the benefit, or as like your motivator to this?
I'd say go out to a nice restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to be able to go out to eat.
Yeah.
So that means that in your cost, you also have to write down that you're not going to go out to eat unless you do these things. Okay, so that's another cost we have to think about. So we have the cost of 20 minutes on a Sunday and not going out to eat unless your goals are accomplished. And the benefit, or the motivator is going to be, if you do this, you get to go out.
Yeah.
Okay, you write all that down, follow through with the plan. You have a means of accountability, and how are you going to track it? That's the last part. How are you going to make sure you're accountable to this?
You're like
Are you going to write it down? Where are you going to write this down? Who's going to be looking at this? This is the most important part that we all slack on, every single one of us here. We come up with a plan to get in shape, to do this, to do that, and this is the part we suck at. You have to think about the hardest.
True.
You have to know the notepad you're going to write it down. You have to know how often you're going to have it checked. Think about all these things. Do you have an idea of how you would implement this?
Yeah, I'd probably say get a whiteboard that I could hang on my wall.
Nice.
That way I can see it.
Nice. Okay, so get a whiteboard, mark it on the whiteboard, and then once you finish the week, you're just going to erase your tallies and start all over?
Yeah.
All right, great. So we have a plan.
Yeah.
Awesome job, man.
Woo!
Okay, in case no one had volunteered, I was going to say, remember those life-changing decisions from the last slide? Participating will get you places.
Yeah.
So that's actually all that I have for you all. I want to hear some great questions from you. So open the floor to ask anything about anything. Yes, you in the back. You right there.
Oh.
Also, when I call on you, please introduce yourself, just so I know.
Hi, my name is Destino Caber, and I'm part of the IT track.
Okay.
Your story kind of like reminds me of mine. By the way, I stayed very briefly, and you probably heard this little place called DeKalb, Illinois.
Yeah.
Oh.
DeKalb, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know DeKalb. My other homeless buddy ended up living in DeKalb in 2014, and I visited him.
Wow.
There's some really small, crappy apartments.
Trailer park.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right now, my advice, what I'm asking for is an advice. What would you recommend when you're just at a point where, it is, it's a make it or break it, like you are, you feel like, you are pushed up against a corner and, you're just surrounded by just so many things and just, making things just so difficult to just kind of like, move through, like you feel just so cornered, It's like you've got a full on, like you're just a single person, facing the entire football team.
Yeah.
So far I've done really, really well, not going into the, fight or flight mode or anything like that, I've studied, I've read Dr. David Burns' Feel Good and some other stuff as well. But what I'm asking for is, how can I keep this attitude? What would you advise, to stay away from and to, implement more into my life in order for me to, continue in this much more healthy mentality rather than slipping back into a bad place. Like
Okay.
that.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit of a story that's pretty related to it, and maybe it'll kind of inform how you can use the skills from that to yourself. Okay. So I was homeless, and at the same time, this other kid Justin, this other kid Jackson were homeless too. So what we did was we got comfortable with the corner. Okay, you press against the corner, get comfortable with it, embrace it. We call ourselves the Three Musketeers, or the Homeless Musketeers. We became really good friends, bonded by this. When we would go to the food pantry, we would go as a team, and we would break out. I mean, we were fighting old women, and not really, but it's when there's a 30-pound turkey. I mean, you're gonna strong arm your way in there. So what we did was we made it a collective thing where we embraced the corner. Okay, so that's the first thing you have to do. The other way you can do that, if you don't have two other homeless friends, you will hopefully soon, but you can frame it like the hero's journey. That's the other thing we did. We always talked about everything like the hero's journey. Like, wow, we're at rock bottom right now. Like, this means the climb starts, and we would talk about where we're going to end up at the end of our story and how we're going to tell the story once we're past it. We're embracing the corner. You can't get out of it until you've gotten comfortable with it. I don't know if you know anything about martial arts, but one of the things that you learn is to get relaxed and comfortable. You can't make informed decisions until you do. So to feel comfortable, you have to become comfortable, which kind of sounds like chicken and the egg scenario, but it's not. Reframe, the book I recommended talks about some strategies for reframing, but either find some friends in similar situations or make this your story. Own the corner. Feel comfortable with it, and then once you're comfortable with it, in the beginning of your day, you can do what we just did, which is start to set a plan to tackle each day, day by day. All right. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Oh, no problem, man.
How you doing? My name's Jamel.
Good, man.
Business track. I noticed on your LinkedIn you just graduated from the University of Illinois. Congratulations on that.
Oh, yeah, thanks, man.
But I just wanted to know, like in today's day and age with technology and the new generation that's coming along, do you feel a formal education is necessarily needed to be successful?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I hate the worst thing you can do to, it's a big accomplishment to graduate or to get into school. And I'm not trying to say those things aren't important, but what you're going to school for is to eventually make an impact on the world, okay? You don't need to go to school to make an impact on the world. All right, so for my buddy Justin, one of the other friends of mine who is homeless, he's learning trade right now. He's learning how to weld, he's learning some basic mechanic skills, some electrician skills, and he's doing great. I mean, he's learning a skill. If you go to school and you're not working toward the longer term goal, which is how can I make a positive impact on the world and for myself, then you're wasting your time. So you can do that without school. A lot of the time it's actually, for certain things, better to do it without school. It's really going to be a case-by-case basis, but part of that is not thinking about necessarily like, oh, do I want to go to school or not? But think past that. Going to school isn't, that's not the destination. You haven't really set your mind on a destination. You're just setting your mind on a path with no real end. Always focus, like aim high, look down the road. So no, you don't need school, you need a plan. And school is helpful because it gives people a plan. And if you don't have school, that's fine. But make sure you have a plan. Maybe it's some trade school. Maybe it's 6 months at a community college learning a specific skill. Maybe it's working at this type of job for this many months to gain this experience to help get you to where you want to be. You still need that plan though. So school, people have used as a proxy for the plan, but it's not. You have to actively own this yourself. So no, don't need school.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joshua.
Nice to meet you, Joshua.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story with everybody. There's a question that I had, but you kind of answered it.
Yeah.
It was like, what motivated you to address the homelessness issue? And kind of talking about your story. So those two connected.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, so I talked about owning the corner, right? I feel really uncomfortable sharing my story. Actually, I felt really ashamed because to me it was like an unfortunate set of circumstances. I don't want people to think I'm whining or complaining. I know that people have had it way harder than me. I don't want handouts. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. So it's kind of an uncomfortable thing to share the story, right? But we talked about getting comfortable with the corner. So rather than let that story scare me, I'm just going to own it. I'm going to own it, tell it my way, which is from a very positive, solution-oriented outlook. And